So here is an example of how it was done. Any condition type where you want that rounding to show up, you set it to a calculation type of 17. That's when it shows that rounded value. And this is where you see calculated rounding difference, right? So this is rounding. And remember, rounding diff, this condition type diff, is a group condition, meaning it applies across line items, and wherever you see that diff, wherever that diff applies, it gets proportionately adjusted, and you see the exact value, the total rounding that was done at the header level, or rather the total value of rounding at the header level, right? And of course, the condition type, set rounding to commercial. So once again, what is rounding? Rounding is done in pricing so that certain number of decimals can be ignored depending on the type of currency. So if you were doing Japanese currency, you would not even have a decimal, right? Japanese yen does not have decimals, in which case it rounds up the last digit and ignores all the decimals. In case of USD, if your calculation results in 3 decimals or 5 decimals, it rounds up the last decimal and rounds it up to 2 decimals, right? And the standard condition type provided by SAP out of the box is the condition type diff. Make sure that it has a requirement of 13 and a calculation type of 16. What does the requirement type 13 do? The requirement type 13 checks at the company code of the order and the document currency and looks at this table. It's a table, T001R or something like that, that's maintained in this transaction. It's a finance transaction, OB90, where the rounding rules are specified. And you have to understand how these rounding rules work. I've explained and how 10 works and how 5 works, right? These are the major rounding rules, 5, 10, and 100. And finally, we have seen an example by entering a line item and making sure that for this currency and this company code, rounding rules diff condition type gets triggered, and we entered a value that is beyond 2 digits, for example 859.12, and we have seen that being rounded off to 1 digit, 859.10, right? And the actual rounding difference is pushed or calculated in the diff condition type. And the calculation type is using a routine number 17 or 16. And if you want to really look at the total rounding difference, don't look at the line item, look at the header. Okay, and make sure that the condition type is a group condition and set the rounding to commercial in the condition type. Now, if you want a particular subtotal to show up the rounded value, that's when you use a calculation type of 7. Now, rounding typically in big companies is a pretty nasty experience. The reason being, most of the time, the way pricing is calculated is so complex that you end up with different kinds of rounding rules that apply to different kinds of currencies across so many different company codes. So what we have seen is the standard SAP's way of doing things. But most of the time that I've seen, companies tend to use their own custom rounding rules that you can very well write based on the type of calculation. So you can set all your rules in that table or pull it up from OB90, maintain your own Z table, and then do your rounding. And where do you want to apply that rounding? Where do you want to store it? How do you want to show it on the invoice? How do you want to post it? Typically, rounding differences are posted as ERS. The key in pricing is ERS, sales reduction, be it positive or negative. So it doesn't go to the price, instead goes to the discount account. So all of that can be customized in pricing if the company really wants to.